This is Sandy Shallis from Environmental Coffee House, and this is a live interview with Dr. David Benac from Michigan. He is running in the Congressional District 6 in Michigan. It's Southwest Michigan, I believe.
Yes.
And David, we're going to build a little bit of an audience when you do these live interviews. It takes a couple of minutes for people to join, but I would like to welcome you to this
Thank you.
environmental endeavor in our little corner of the social media internet universe here. So tell me, I did some research on you, and you were a Sanders delegate.
Yes.
Correct? So
Correct.
This is what opened your eyes to make you run. So give us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you landed here.
Okay. So the quick kind of backstory before helping with the Sanders campaign is I grew up in northern rural Michigan. My family's been farming up there since the 1850s, and mostly small family farms. And as I was getting ready for college, my parents, I decided there's 4 siblings in addition to myself, and my parents put us all through school, but we raised and sold Christmas trees. And that's how we raised enough money for college for all of us. We've always been really close to the land ever since I was little. Didn't really get a chance to see it from an environmentalist perspective until I moved away and went to college. But it was always working outside, being in the woods, being around animals, and trying to appreciate what was out there in the world around me.
Oh, that's a sweet way to intro yourself. That's nice. Another thing is that I was thrilled about being a former academic person that worked, in college campus for my whole career, almost 20 years, over 20 years, that you taught 2 classes. You are a history professor, and you taught 2 classes that one is called American Environmental History, and the other one was American Environmental Movements. And I looked at the syllabus, and I already have a book I want to read from it. How do you feel that your experience at the university, teaching and all that you've done, gets you ready to be a congressman representing your district?
So as a historian, what you do really is you try to understand how an event fits into historical context. So what pattern or series of events got us to a certain place, and then what actions we took that led to a new place in time. And as a historian, you're always trying to understand what's the relationship, what's the context. And you're always thinking about different people's perspectives. You can never go back in time and try to just understand it from your own point of view. So it really almost by default turns you into someone who's really good at understanding other people's arguments, because you have to understand every possible way of approaching a topic before you can start to dig into it. So that's one of the things that I think helps as I'm trying to get ready for congressional issues and congressional debates, and I'm running for this office, is I can't just approach a topic like, this is what I want to see happen because this is what's right. Because that's not the way the world works. It's not the way the world's ever worked. You have to take everybody, even if, hey Rick, even if it is somebody who is on the absolute opposite side of you. I have to look at what Trump does and say, okay, I see where he's coming from, and I have to understand how his actions and how his beliefs fit into what I'm trying to accomplish. So I think it just makes you think about how everything fits together.
Everything fits together. It sure does somehow. And given that, how everything fits together, let's talk a little bit then about fitting together the progressive vision for our environment. And then tell me about your area. So the progressive vision, your environmental area in the 6th district, tie it all in together for that area.
Okay. So the area that I live in, Michigan's southwest corner, is a really cool corner of the state of Michigan. Michigan's a great state. I mean, I don't say that just because I live here, I grew up in Michigan, but then I moved for a while, and I lived in Indiana, and I lived in Missouri, and I lived in Louisiana before I got a chance to come back to Michigan. And it is really an amazing state. That slogan that we had a few years ago, Pure Michigan, they kind of shelved that for a lot of reasons and not living up to Pure Michigan, but and it really is great. So the southwest corner of the state is really, it's the fruit belt in Michigan because we have the effect of the lake moderating the temperature, and we have some really good fertile soils here. So there's a lot of great agriculture. This is where all the cherries and blueberries and apples and all the fruit agriculture is. There's a lot of produce here, and there's a lot of water, a lot of outdoor activities. It's kind of crummy weather right now. I'm not a big fan of the super cold, but we deal with it. That's Michigan. We get seasons. I lived in Louisiana. You had hot and you had not as hot. Yeah. Oh. So, here we got some great seasons. But on the other hand, we have some incredible environmental difficulties in this state. And if you look back, some of the first cases against DDT, the Environmental Defense Foundation, when they first started, happened here in Michigan, in southwest Michigan, where they were applying it to fight Japanese beetle outbreaks in the fruit orchard. So it goes all the way back there, and then Flint is in Michigan. It's the other side of the state, but it raises our attention to what are the water issues. And then right here, I'm living in Kalamazoo, and in Kalamazoo we have one of the nation's largest Superfund sites, the Kalamazoo River. Yeah, all the way.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, all the way from upriver from where we are a little bit, all the way to the lake is a Superfund site. The entire river, and it's actually not because of the oil spill a few years ago. The largest inland oil spill in the entire U.S. history is right here in Kalamazoo. But that's not the reason it's a Superfund. It's a Superfund because we have a history of paper making, and so it's the PCBs that the papermaking industry left behind. So we have a lot of really serious environmental issues, but we have a lot of great reasons to solve it, not just for human health and environmental health and sustainability, but it's a beautiful part of the state. We really need to work harder to protect it.
It seems like such a nice part of the state. And when I was researching it, it seems very much like where I live in New York, being near the lake and the kind of demographics. Similar. And even the university where you were working and where I was working, I thought, wow, this is a mirror, especially with where I live is very Republican. And I think we have politicians like the guy that you're running against and his name, Fred Upton. This guy, supposedly, I guess he's got a pretty bad environmental record, huh?
But he fools people into thinking he doesn't. You can really see his environmental record, but you have to look. He tells everybody he's a moderate and he's anything from it. The Los Angeles Times in 2011 named him the #1 enemy to the planet.
Oh, do tell.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that's saying something when it's the Los Angeles Times saying it, and this is the southwest corner of Michigan, 2,000 some miles away. And they figured, because he was chair of the House Energy Committee at the time, and he was using every power at his disposal to block environmental regulations and protections every chance he had.
And he's been in now, 1986, 16 terms.
Yes.
Does that make you think maybe in the United States we should look at term limits because people get so set? I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not a huge fan of term limits, and I know in a lot of cases that's not a popular decision, but here's my logic on that.
Okay.
So if we get term limits, we have to throw the good out with the bad. So that means we got to get rid of people like Senator Sanders, which would be a major loss. But in addition, I think what term limits do is they hand control of government over to the lobbyists. Because if you have, well, think about it. If you have somebody who is limited to, say, 3 terms, then no matter how smart someone is or how experienced they are outside, there's a learning curve. So as soon as they learn the job, it's time for them to leave. The only people who are around forever are the lobbyists. They're the ones who actually, the only people in government then who know what's going on. And so I do agree with you that we have a lot of people who need to go. I mean, we've got and it does tend to be just about absolutely true that the longer somebody's in, the more corrupt they become and the more out of touch they become. But I think we need to do a better job of mobilizing voters and educating voters and using the elections as our term limits.
I'm not speechless. I just think that's something I never looked at. I never looked at it that way. And thank you. That's enlightening, to say the least. I didn't think of it. And especially in light of the way money rules. And we have to get rid of Citizens United. Do you have a way? You're in the Congress and there's going to be a vote. How do you feel that you'll be able to convey these things to other congressmen, especially about changing campaign finance laws, those kinds of things? Tell me about, you think, the communication that's going to happen in there.
It's going to be a huge battle, but I really think that there are two things that are that underlie the foundation of all the problems that we face in this country, and it's gerrymandering, and it's the money in politics issue, and we absolutely have to fix those two things before we're going to be able to make much headway in many other categories. The best way I think to do it is create these coalitions. So I've been endorsed by both Justice Democrats and brand new Congress, and I think that that's the kind of thing that's going to push the country forward, is we get more and more candidates on board with the same ideas in terms of we have to end Citizens United, we have to have nonpartisan redistricting, we have to protect the environment, we have to protect the most vulnerable citizens, we have to have better immigration policy. And those are not necessarily partisan issues. Those are human and planetary issues. If we can come into Congress with those things at the top of our agenda, we can find different ways to get there. Jeff, you're right.
I got to show that one. Yeah. Too bad we can't have term limits for lobbyists. Hi, Jeff. Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah. That was a good one. Broke the seriousness of the moment, but it is pretty serious. I think if at the same time we were waking up to Bernie, we all got the book. Did I end this? No. Oh, I'm sorry. When you're one woman, sorry guys, when you're a one woman control center and you make one little move on a thing that's so sensitive, I just almost had a panic attack. Anyway, talking about Jane Mayer's book, Dark Money. That was a book that really, it woke me up to a lot of things. I mean, I didn't know exactly who the Koch brothers were and all that. Yeah, exactly. Hey, let's segue over there to the Koch brothers. What is your whole opinion and your view of what's happening now with the control in Washington? Since you're going to be in Congress.
That's right.
How are you going to work with these people?
Well, yeah, that's tough. There's some people you just can't work with. And I'm sorry, that's tough. You have to find the people that you can work. And this goes back to the brand new Congress thing. I love their slogan from way before they endorsed the campaign. Their slogan's post-partisan politics. And what that means to me is that we're not saying we're not Democrats or we're not Republicans anymore. We're looking for issues that are more important than partisanship. We're looking for, say, stopping runaway climate change. And maybe Republicans and Democrats have a different way that we're going to get there. But, we have to find a way to get there. And so let's take their idea and my idea and let's put them together and let's say, okay, this is bigger than what we're going to do as a partisan approach. And I think that's what we need to do. It's not so much, hey, let's work with the Republicans and, hey, the Republicans say let's work with the Democrats. It's let's find the issue that is so big that we cannot just be solely partisan on it, and let's try to solve it.
That's what we're doing, trying to solve it. So somebody had said, I just have to say, that was it. How about a lobby tax? That would be taxing the lobbyists.
Well, the way things are going, we make a lot of money off of that one.
Yeah, that's true. Well, then I'm going to segue and I want to ask you, what would be your favorite committee, or what committee would you like to be on out of all the committees? The energy, the ways and means, transportation and infrastructure, education and the workforce, science and tax space, financial services, foreign affairs. What do you think? Which ones?
Energy. I'd love to be in energy, just to try to repair some of the damage that the hopefully outgoing incumbent in this district has done. Education. As an educator, I feel like I could do a lot of things to undo the damage that one of the people who lives in my state, who's now the Secretary of Education, is trying to do. DeVos is a native Michigander, which is a disaster for the entire planet.
I'm so sorry for your state.
Yes, and she's awful. And then I'd love to be on infrastructure because I think that it's a way we can solve a lot of problems. We can hire people. We can make the nation more sustainable. And Patrick says, let's solve global warming. We do some approaches with infrastructure. Let's fix our energy grid. Let's get more public transportation. Let's put some money into trains, high-speed trains. We do things like that. Those are infrastructure fixes that can really push us down the path towards doing something about global warming.
Are those policy stands of Justice Democrats? Do they have that kind of intricate policies? Because other candidates I interviewed were speaking that kind of same language.
Yeah, and I don't know about the absolute specifics, but yes, in broad strokes. And that's one of the things that's great about these progressive organizations is they realize that different districts have different needs. So it's not necessarily saying these are the exact ways that we're going to do things, but we need better infrastructure, and the infrastructure needs to be good for people on the planet. We need better campaign finance laws. We need better public education and get rid of some of this private education. We need to do better veterans benefits, and let's stop getting into all these interventionist wars, but take care of the veteran. These kind of progressive policies that Justice Democrats are really supporting.
How is the Justice Democrats faring with the Democratic committees in your state? The state committee locals?
I would say that the biggest problem with the Democratic Party is at the national leadership level.
I agree.
And the closer you go to the local level, the less problematic party leadership becomes. So at the state level, we have a plan that was put in place, and they called it Project 83. And I was really excited about when they kicked off that plan because we have 83 counties in the state, and it was kind of like harkening back to Howard Dean's 50-state strategy. It was an 83 county strategy. And it started off really strong, boots on the ground, getting canvassers, knocking on doors, organizing at the precinct level. And they realized that they just didn't have the volunteers or the energy or the enthusiasm at the state leadership level. And after a while, it's turned into more of a way to have house parties to raise money for the party coffers. So I think even where some of the things that are going, there's good ideas and there's often good intentions, but I don't think that the party is changing as quickly as it needs to. And that's where the Justice Democrats and the progressive movement is coming in to say, not just we're going to push you, we're going to go out there in front of you and show you how to do it.
I like that. That's really what we need. I don't think we have time to mess around. 2018 elections, I have so much hope on them because I want to see the climate deniers out of our government. That's big one for me. It's huge. And a lot of people that follow us, same thing. And that segues into HR 3671.
Yep.
Tulsi Gabbard's bill, 115th Congress. Your state's not supporting it yet.
Right.
What do you think you can do for that?
Well, I think that the state as a whole is going to be, I would be surprised if the state gets on board. Now, we have some parts of the state that have made some real strides forward. We've got a couple of cities in the state that have pledged to go carbon neutral, which is great. It's a good step forward.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the state of Michigan is someplace where we could take leadership on this bill. Just right here in Kalamazoo, we've got a community college, Kalamazoo Valley Community College, that one of their most popular programs is building and repairing wind turbines. And yeah, it's such a popular program that they've got a waiting list for students to get into it. So there is a demand for these types of programs. People want these jobs. People are willing to do it. And if we can put our federal resources and all this incentives that we dump into the fossil fuel companies, let's dump those instead into places like this community college that's training students to build and repair wind turbines. This is a simple solution. Let's put the money someplace where it's going to do some good instead of go straight into somebody's, some corporation's bank account.
It's great. That is really on target. I like that a lot. I think that the education piece, but also training people in your community, have training programs on subsistence. And things like what you have is a community garden.
That's right.
And I saw that and I really liked it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about how to take that to the next levels in your community.
The community garden idea is such a great idea because the community first, garden second, and that's the way that ours started, and that's the way I think that they should start. A few of the people in the neighborhood decided that they wanted to have a community garden, not just for themselves, but primarily for their kids. And we talked to the city, and we put the garden in a city park that's on the edge of the neighborhood, where the Kalamazoo has a wealth of community gardens. But this is the first one in the city that is on city property. And the city was really excited about it. And they're helping us out in terms of they supply the mulch and they supply the soil. The rest of it's all the community. We got some grants to get some of the tools and get some of the supplies that we needed. But everybody in the community came together. We spent a couple of weekends and dug up the grass and took out a rotting flower bed that no one had been taking care of anymore. And it was great because there were kids running everywhere. There were adults digging and shoveling and pushing wheelbarrows around. This is what community is about.
Community is going to be very important coming with all of our weather issues and the change in the climate. It is so important. The things I think about around here, we're a very big farming community. I don't know. Do you have farming in your area?
Well, so the district is overwhelmingly rural. So it is primarily a rural agricultural district. Now, there are some good things about that, and there are some bad things about that. The bad thing is in one of the counties, the main employer is Monsanto.
Boy.
And the crazy thing is that we don't even grow like corn that people are eating or animals are eating. We're growing the seed corn that Monsanto is then selling to other parts of the country and all over the world. And that's the bad side of it. But the good side of it is we have a real strong sustainability movement that's taking off. So there's a lot of the farms that are trying to transition to sustainable practices and, where possible, to organic. So you can go to a lot of blueberry farms here. You can pick organic blueberries, and you can go to the farmers market. Kalamazoo has the best farmers market I have ever seen, and it's better than farmers markets on the West Coast in bigger cities. So we've got it, and all over the district. You can go to tiny little towns. We've got a tiny little town called Bangor, and it's just a tiny little hamlet, and they have a great farmers market. So we have a lot of things going on here, and there's good and bad, but we need to transition, I say, to a 21st century agricultural, and that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a big part of what I'm pushing for here. Is let's take the same subsidies that we're currently putting into commodity crops, like soybeans and corn. Those crops are only profitable because the government's dumping huge subsidies into it, and because of the petrochemical industry that's supporting it. So instead of supporting that, let's take that money, turn it around, and put it into sustainable, diversified agriculture, which is going to employ more people. It's going to make healthier food. It's going to keep that farm productive for generations so you can pass it down to your kids. You're going to make more profits so you can actually continue to own your farm instead of going to bankruptcy. This is one of these, it's a multi-layered policy idea that can help us in a lot of different ways.
It's refreshing. Those are the things I think we all like to hear. That's going forward. With a place like Monsanto in your community, it makes me think: how will these companies fare in the transference? So from going to fossil fuels to renewable energy, you take a monster company like Monsanto, and their people. How do you think this will work? How will this implement? It's what, 2035? I think that's the time frame. So getting people jobs in the community, changing over. What do you see? What's your vision?
I think that these giant corporations, places like Monsanto, they're going to be just fine. I'm not worried at all about Monsanto's future. And that's not just because I don't like what they're doing. I think they're a bad neighbor. But they know what's going on. They can read the writing on the wall. And I guarantee you that they're prepared for any changes that might come down the line. And that if we get to a point where we can actually get off fossil fuels, they're going to be prepared for what comes next. So I'm not worried about them and their profits and their ability to continue to employ people, because if that's what they want to do, there's no way that they won't be able to. That doesn't bother me. What bothers me is the negative effects that they're causing on the environment and on everyone's health if we don't make that transition.
Absolutely. So if in your community, then, well, you're saying they'll be fine. I did see, and this leads me to the GMO question you had talked about in another video I saw. Could you elaborate on your position with GMOs, being that you live in Monsanto?
Yeah. Now, personally, for me, my wife and I, we don't eat any GMO products. We keep GMO stuff out of the house, but that's my decision. And I think that as an American, you should absolutely have the right to make that decision. So anybody who argues against the labeling of GMO products, I think, is trying to deprive us of the ability to make our own decision about our own lives. And if some company out there is making GMO food or GMO products, and they think that that's a good thing because it's so technologically advanced and so wonderful, then why aren't they promoting it and trying to sell it because of that instead of trying to hide it from us? If they're trying to hide it from us, there's a reason for it, and we know what the reason is. It's because they know it's not good for us.
It's a food safety thing also. Right. And they know it's not good for us. Well, it is. It's the profit margin. So be that you mentioned the corn and the farms, what do you think about hemp farming? New York State is starting to do this. I know we're not ahead of the game here, but people like my husband and myself are looking to farm maybe 2 or 3 of our acres and work in a cooperative. How do you see that for your state? You think is it happening in Michigan yet?
Not happening here yet. There are, through the ag extension, there are various places trying to start to experiment with it, but it's such a tightly controlled thing because it's a Schedule I drug. And Jeff Sessions intends everything he can do to make sure that we never get a chance to go anywhere near it. And but you're even talking hemp. You're not talking, marijuana with a THC content. Yeah. But I think that the solution here is we need to completely deschedule marijuana across the board, because the social justice benefits, the health benefits, and the economic benefits. But let's start with social justice, because that's where we need to focus this discussion. But then we can carry this out to hemp, and hemp is it's on the verge of being a super crop. You don't want to overstate it and say that about it, but it is a crop that provides an incredible number of benefits and is a pretty environmentally safe crop when it comes right down to it. It's not very hard in the soil. It It doesn't take a whole lot of water. It grows in just about any conditions, and just about anywhere in the country.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's no reason that we're not growing it other than it's not good for the big corporations.
Yeah, I know, but it would be more carbon sinks that we need to replace the deforestation that's going on, and now it's going on because of the hurricane in the south. Now they're Oregon, their lumber mills are their planet eaters are going at it, and people up there are telling me what's going on. It's terrible. So good. The hemp advocacy is a good thing. I think it goes along with the HR 3671.
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes along with the other bill that Tulsi Gabbard brought. She has a legalization of marijuana bill. I don't know the specific number, but tell me, how is Michigan as far as attitude towards legalizing or decriminalizing?
We just, there's a group called Am I Legalized, and we have, they've collected the necessary signatures to get it on the ballot, complete adult use, complete adult recreational use legalization.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I encourage anybody to take a look at the proposed legislation that we have by Am I Legalized here. It will really be the most progressive marijuana policy in the country when it passes in 2018, because all the polling data indicates that the state's ready for it. And I really hope they do pass it, because it will be a good boon to the people of the state.
Sure it would. And New York, I'm so surprised that we're as far as we are. I really am. Even though we're a blue state and whatever, it still takes so long to get anything done here. But I think our Governor Cuomo had a state of the state, and he talked about hemp. And I believe now one of the problems was getting it processed. And that's the next thing now, is bringing processing plants in to do it. So people like us could do that, farm a few acres and work with the rest of the community. But you have to get that buy-in. And some of the communities in their conservatism, it's hard to get people to understand that this is not something to be scared of.
Right.
Especially I don't plant corn, plant hemp. So I'd like to see Michigan have that happen.
Yeah, I was at a township board meeting last week, and it's a township. So right now we have the authorization at the state level for medical marijuana, but municipalities have to opt in. And so this township was having a township meeting about opting into it. And there was a lot of debate back and forth. And basically the argument against it was, this is too new. We don't want to be the cutting edge. We don't want to step in front of an issue. We want to wait and see how everybody else does it first, and then we'll think about it. And the other argument people were talking about is they're saying, this is an agricultural community. We grow corn. Nobody, worries about the corn that you grow being used to go out and then the person's going to get in a car accident because of using corn. I was thinking in my mind, well, they don't know where whiskey comes from? Whiskey's as close to the corn as the marijuana plant is to what you
sour mash.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's just a real ideological objection to it, and that's all that's holding it back at this point.
Ideological. Yeah. Well, we are stuck in this, the twilight zone of ideological in this country right now. That's, again, I go back to this. I say it all the time. Everybody get involved. 2018. Even with voting, I am a petition member of the Democratic Party here because I feel that it's important to know and understand what's going on in my community, and an election inspector. And when people complain about things, I say, well, then get involved, become an election inspector, and you can understand what happens and prevent things from happening by being that person watching. So we don't have those little shenanigans that played themselves out in 2016.
Yeah.
And you had said in an interview I watched that you saw firsthand some of that. Maybe go into that experience a little.
So do you mean in terms of with the election or with the lead up to it?
the election, the lead up, what you saw as a delegate. Yeah.
So I was lucky enough because of the work I'd done with the Sanders campaign and all the doors we knocked here and all the organizing we did. And I have to put in a plug for the work we did. Sanders won the congressional district that I live in, 57.4% of the vote, which was the largest margin of victory he got in the entire state of Michigan. And as we know, Michigan, his victory here in Michigan was really what made his campaign nationally legitimate. When he won in Michigan, it was what put him over the edge to say, oh, wow, he could actually win this thing. And so I have to say, maybe it was my congressional district that made Sanders nationally viable, because he got his biggest win here. But when after that the initial organizing period, I was one of 3 people from the state that he chose to represent him at the National Platform Committee. So I didn't go to Philadelphia. So we went to Florida. I can't remember what city it was now. Orlando, sorry, there it was. We went to Orlando to hash out the platform committee, and when we were there, so the Bernie delegates we knew we were in the minority, but we were fighting for things like expanding Social Security, for stopping the Dakota Access Pipeline, for stopping the Trans-Pacific Partnership, for putting real regulations on the banking industry, for shutting down the School of the Americas, which is where we train terrorists, and all these things that are really, truly progressive measures. And we didn't get any of that into the platform, none of it. And all of the people we see as national leadership in the Democratic Party were there. And they were advocating against all of these really important progressive things that we take for granted as what the Democratic Party is supposed to stand for. Yeah. They're supposed to stand for the working class and unions and Social Security and regulations on banking, and it was all turned down. So I left there absolutely upset with what I saw, because to me it looked like the National Democratic Party had just been everything that I had feared and everything I'd been told. I just saw it on display that they were throwing in their lot with big corporations rather than the working class. And that's really when I had to get into the race, and had to get in the race at the congressional level, because until we get new Democratic Party national leadership, so people in Congress, people running as governors and senators, until we get those people in the Democratic Party, we're going to continue to be controlled by corporations on both sides of the aisle.
And it's very environmentally unfriendly to be controlled by corporations.
Yes.
It is killing us, literally. So you got a first-hand, kind of brutal education in corruption.
Yes.
It was very corrupt. And I think that this whole new wave with brand new Congress, I remember I went to a brand new Congress meeting and I live streamed it way back before I even did this. And I thought, this is just the way it's got to be. This is great. Now, and I watched all the other Justice Democrats, these things growing, and even the third party out there, the third parties. It is refreshing to have candidates like you, and like all of the candidates that I've now been really lucky to interview. I'm honored. I'm humbled, and I think everybody else is too. I really do. It's a bit of hopium. The term hopium.
Yeah, that's
hopium,
great.
Yeah, I didn't make it up, but it's a term I've picked up. We have hope, but yet are we on opium? Dare we have hope? Yes, we do. We have hope because we have no choice but to get the things done that we have to get done before the Arctic ice melts. That's right. Happening. We've watched all of these weather events unfold before our eyes. They may have not hit us really hard, or in Michigan really hard yet, but they will.
That's right.
They will. Do you would you like to comment on one more thing in that the transfer? And go back a little bit. I digress a little bit on that. getting the HR 3671 in. And did we talk about your community? I know we started with Monsanto, but did we talk about your community and mandates, clean energy mandates, or how people would feel about moratoriums on fossil fuels, the things that are in the bill locally? How could you sell it, and then how can you make people feel comfortable that they're going to have a future if they're not, digging a pipeline somewhere?
Yeah, and I think it comes back, and unfortunately, a lot of it comes back to pocketbook issues. So right now, you mentioned, how are people going to have a future if they're not digging a pipeline? And so it goes back to like what the community college is doing here, and training people to work on wind farms. And we need to start installing solar. We need to start incentivizing green energy. And one of the things that I love about Representative Gabbard's bill is the social justice components of it. And that bill is really designed to make sure that every level of society benefits from what we can gain. So a lot of the times today, when you put incentives in for somebody to install solar panels, the benefits go to the people who are relatively well off, who can afford solar panels. One of the things that Representative Gabbard's bill is going to do, when we pass it, is that it's going to make sure that every single American, no matter where they are on the economic scale, is going to have some benefits to accrue to them.
Oh, that's great. Now, you're the state of, you've got Detroit in your state.
Yeah.
And you've got this whole, the auto industry. They're not in your area, or do you have any plants in your area, in your district?
There's not any auto manufacturing plants here, but there is manufacturing related to the auto industry is a substantial part of the economics in this district. So there's a lot of one of the big factories where I've got some support from union labor is American Axle. And so they build, axles for drivetrains. And, they talk to a few of the people and say, it doesn't matter what kind of a car it is, it still needs an axle.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
Yeah. So,
we had American Axle here in Buffalo when I lived there. Big company.
Yeah, so, the thing is, we're not trying to destroy the industry that exists. We're not trying to destroy the auto industry. We're just saying it's time to make the next evolutionary leap to what comes next. And what comes next is going to be, all plug-in electric cars or trucks or SUVs or whatever they are, but they're going to be much more fuel efficient, and it's going to be much better for the. And one of the things with is think about what happens to neighborhoods, and particularly poor neighborhoods that get cut in half when a freeway gets put through them. It destroys the health, it destroys the community, it destroys the property values of those people's homes. But think about this, just one of kind of the funny little things about when we move to electric cars. You'll be able to live next to that freeway, and you're not going to have to worry about asthma. You're not going to have to worry about gas and oil runoff from the cars, and it's going to be quiet. You'll be able to sleep at night. Yeah. So even things like that, there's so many benefits that people don't think about that we're going to gain when we get off of this addiction to fossil fuels.
I hope it's sooner than later. I just really hope it's sooner than later. I'm so concerned about what my generation has left to yours. And it's a difficult feeling, because we were the generation that probably my mother's and mine that had everything. We saw all of the technology, but we also used it. We also polluted. We did it all. And all of a sudden we woke up. And I think Bernie Sanders was a big part of it for so many people. Woke up to, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm clueless. I'm blind. I've got to wake up to all this. I mean, I had a political awareness. I was always in something. But a lot of people were not, or we went to sleep. And we woke up, and I hope it's not too late, though. That's all it is. Of all the stuff we read, this has been really a good interview.
Yeah, and you know, the night, what I think about, you talking about generations. In the 1960s and 1970s, Americans mobilized, woke up, and decided they were going to take to the streets, they were going to take over the political system, and they were going to demand, you know, women's rights. They're going to demand civil rights. They're going to demand better respect for treaties with American Indians. They're going to demand a different foreign policy. They're going to demand that we were more respectful of the environment. And great changes happened. But all of a sudden, after that, we dropped the ball as Americans. And we just sat back and let the victories we accomplished in the 60s and 70s disappear. And so now we're having to go back and win those all over again. It's like a war that we lost the ground, and now we're trying to gain it back. You know, so we need to get back to being involved, and that's one of the things you mentioned with Senator Sanders. And frankly, I would say, you know, Obama, particularly in his 2008 election, you know, it woke people up to taking part in the political process because we believed that we could make a difference. And if we don't believe we can make a difference, we're in trouble. But right now, the Women's March is a great example. And look how many people were out in the streets. We're about to have the first anniversary of it. People are getting excited again. I think that we are at a great time in history where we can start to rewrite our economy, our foreign policy, our environmental issues. If we do the right thing, we'll be really lucky. We can leave a better world behind us.
Well, our planet is depending on it. Our Mother Earth is depending on these changes happening. We cannot continue to have this growth, unlimited growth. We have a finite amount of resources, and I think this is a really good place to end our first interview. It's been really good. And well, if anybody has anything before we end, David, this has been enlightening, and I've enjoyed it a lot. I hope we can do this again.
Absolutely.
I think that it's pretty quiet out there in the cheering section, but okay. Well, anyway, everybody that's joined, thank you. What we're going to do is put up the links to David's campaign, because we can't forget, every $27, every $17, whatever you can do to all these candidates, even if you can do 5 to 5 different candidates that are going to assure that we get the climate deniers out of Congress and the Senate. Maybe I sound like a one issue person, but it eclipses everything. We have to do this. We have to do this so that we can have good health care, so that we can have good education. And I think you pretty well articulated it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and all the people watching, and let's do it again.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Good night. Peace. David, hang around. We're going to end, and